The negative thoughts and conversation in my mind, in our mind, that's what I want you to think about. I just want you to think about those negative thoughts and that conversation that's going on in your mind. And here's the question I ask you about those negative thoughts. This is fascinating. You're going to love this. What time frame is that conversation that's going on in your head referring to?
Great morning, world! Welcome to the Rise Up with Dragon podcast with your host, Dragon!
Great morning, my friends and world. Welcome to another edition of the Rise Up with Dragon podcast. As a quick reminder, it is the goal of this podcast to remove the blindfolds of your programmed mind and widen your field of consciousness so that the full spectrum of your great potential becomes available to you. We do this with our podcast weekly blog called The Dragon's Lair, One from the Vault, and our upcoming online courses and books. As a reminder, the Rise Up with Dragon podcast is sponsored by Karma Mind. Get into the float state with Karma Mind meditations and gear. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to another edition of the Rise Up with Dragon podcast and show. So I'm always excited, but I can tell you that at the time that we're filming this or doing this one live, and shout out to everybody that comes in live on our Facebook page and LinkedIn. I love when you guys give us feedback and you give us comments and stuff like that. If you're listening to this on the podcast with the majority of folks, the first thing I would say is always make a self-assessment, especially at this time of the year, of recognizing that you're doing what everybody else is doing. Because success always comes from doing things differently, and we'll talk about that today. But if you're listening to this just in the podcast, just know that we do this as a video, in a video format, live streamed through StreamYard. Big shout out to StreamYard, and we do that in our Rise Up with Dragon fan page as well as in our LinkedIn account. So that being said, I just want to give a quick little tidbit as we approach the holiday season, because my wife and I, Chicken and I, we own a life and health transformation company, and we coach just thousands and thousands of people on weight loss, nutrition, and just leveling up their game, as well as teaching everybody the interface response system so that they can learn how to create different perceptions and react to things like food addictions and these patterns and what we do in the holiday seasons. So I just want to share a quick strategy. And this could be for your holiday season, or it could just be for anything that you have coming up, a party or anything. First of all, just recognize that the way you initially perceive the holiday or the party or the wedding or whatever it is, the initial perception of it comes from your old program. So become cognizant of that, and just recognize that your initial perception might not have anything to do with what you want. It might just be your old program saying, oh man, I can't wait for this, I can't wait for that, you know. And there's also a perception of parties and holidays that you're supposed to do this and you're not supposed to do that. So recognize that. Right? Cognitively distance yourself from it, and then make an attempt to gain a rational, more logical approach to a strategy that you're going to go after that is actually in support of what it is that you want before that programmed knee-jerk response comes. So that's the first step that I would say. And then I would just give you, and I don't want to get too much into this because I want to get into my rise up here today called the gratitude frequency. But there's really three strategies that I want to offer you, and this is what we offer our clients. And if you're somebody, by the way, that woke up ready for change and you just don't really know what you're what to do next, and maybe you're just getting caught up in these commercials that are telling you that January 1st is a good idea, even though it wasn't last year, reach out to us. Reach out to us specifically in our Rise Up with Dragon Instagram, and just DM us and just say, hey, I want some info, because we've got an amazing, body and mind structure that's helped hundreds of thousands of people. So here are the 3 strategies, just quickly. One strategy, and it is a strategy if you consciously decide it, is to just say, fuck it, I'm going to do whatever I want. Now that's a strategy. It would be foolish to not actually set that as a strategy and just say, I'll see what happens, because then you're out of control. But if you actually look and say, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want, and understand that it will require a recovery, and you accept that, and you commit to that, that's an actual strategy. The second strategy, very, very common one for people that want to keep things under control, but also have not fully committed and made the fundamental decision to succeed, which is the road less traveled. The other strategy is a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So that strategy recognizes that the outcome is no positive motion, no forward motion, but no backwards motion. So that's an actual strategy as well, very popular one. So if somebody has Thanksgiving or Christmas and you want to eat a little something or have some cocktails or something like that, and you've been refraining from that for whatever reason, obviously that goes deeper for some people, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, understanding that there's a recovery model with that too. And if you accept that and commit to it, you're fine. Now, the third strategy, which sits in the place of the path of least resistance in accordance with your goals, would be to recognize that there's nothing about the holiday or the event that actually gives you permission to do whatever you want. You're just programmed to do that. So if you distance yourself and you recognize that it's just like any other day, and you actually crush that day, what you're actually doing is not only staying on course and crushing your goals, which is where those are the people on the mountaintop, right? Not only are you doing that, but now you're going through some voluntary discomfort and training your discipline muscle to do even better the next time something like that happens. And let's just recognize there are holidays and things like that all the time. So great morning, everybody. We're going to get into our Rise Up here. It's a great one. And it starts off, so it's called the gratitude frequency. And it starts off with a thought. And the thought was, the negative thoughts and conversation in my mind, in our mind, right? That's what I want you to think about. I just want you to think about those negative thoughts and that conversation that's going on in your mind. And here's the question I ask you about those negative thoughts. This is fascinating. You're going to love this. And you know what I'm talking about. I've talked about this on my podcast before. I call it the little liar. What time frame is that conversation that's going on in your head referring to? So what I mean by that is the negative thoughts, the things that say you can't and all that stuff, and the ones that tempt you to do things that are counterproductive. What time frame, in fact, anything that you're worried about, anxious about, what time frame is that conversation referring to? Yes, it's either yesterday or tomorrow. Now, what's interesting about that is we're going to talk about gratitude, which is in the present moment. But isn't it fascinating to recognize that this conversation that you're having is actually identified and connected to the opposite of present moment and gratitude? It's in the future, in the past. So I just want to give you that gift today. The next time you have a negative thought or a worry or a concern or frustration or anger or anything like that, ask yourself what time frame that's happening. So that's kind of where this Rise Up was generated from in my journaling process. So the two things completely out of our control, by the way, are yesterday and tomorrow. Completely out of our control. So when you're thinking about yesterday and tomorrow, the reason why you feel the way you do is because you're out of control. You're an out of control person. Now, what's the solution? Well, the first thing is to recognize the super highway to living in the present moment is the practice of gratitude. Now, I could say that it's gratitude, but we don't just step into gratitude. We have to actually do things. We have to actually it's an intentional thing. You have to become conscious and desire it and then practice it. But it is the practice of gratitude. Like the science of the flow state. Now, our sponsor, which is actually my chicken's new company, Karma Mind, which has just the most epic meditations, and she's selling gear right now. She talks about this concept of getting people into the float state, which I just love, #float state. Now, what I'm talking about now is the science of what we know called the flow state, where everything is just flowing and doing really, really well. Gratitude, so here's what I'm saying. Like the science of the flow state, it's not just something that happens, right? It's something that we have to work to get into and then recognize. And everything's great there. But gratitude is not a destination, but it's actually a state or a frequency. Now, the reason why I love that idea of looking at gratitude as a frequency is it shows you that it needs to be sometimes tuned, right? We can get out of tune. We can get out of frequency. And when frequencies are in tune, they sound clear, but when they're out of tune, they sound scratchy. So we'll get into that. Once tuned in, your worries about the future and the hang-ups about the past actually fade away. So that's the goal. Learning how to get in tune with your gratitude frequency. Just imagine that you have a radio and there's a channel called gratitude, and you have to tune into it. I might be dating myself because I don't think kids have to tune into radio frequencies anymore. They just go to like the next track or something like that. But you have to get into tune with your gratitude frequency, and it actually has a science, art, and philosophy to that process, right? You can't just do it, you have to understand it as well. What's special about gratitude is that it's something that is present. It's actually a present moment practice, meaning it's only existing in the actual present moment. When you acknowledge the things that you actually have, so think about what gratitude means. What are you gracious for? What do you have gratitude towards right now? You're always going to think about something that you actually have. Now, you don't have something in the past. You don't have something in the future. You can dream of the future, but the only place that you actually have something is right now in the present. So by practicing gratitude, you can see that it puts you into the present moment, which really, really is crucial in getting rid of the future and the past, because that's how your frequency gets screwed up. So that tuning of getting to that station called the gratitude frequency, it requires getting rid of the future and the past. So in practicing it, in tuning it, you're getting rid of those and things get a lot better. So when you acknowledge the things that you have, you acknowledge them in the present moment. When you get out of tune as humans, it comes from our desire to get hung up in the past, and that's a desire. Sometimes we actually, it's insane, but we have this desire to get hung up in the past or concerned with the future. We spend most of our day, now Jim Dethmer talks about being above or below the line. When you're below the line and you're closed as a victim, a villain, or a hero, those are past and future oriented feelings, right? So we have this desire and we spend more time below the line, or in the past or the future than in the middle. So another thing to acknowledge is I think it's foolish to think that you can live in gratitude all day. You can practice being in gratitude for more time. But we're wired to go below the line. We're wired to worry about the future and try to change the past. So for those of you that remember, and this is kind of a dated thing, but for those of you that remember the old-fashioned radios, there was no button that took you to the station, that you wanted to listen to. You'd find the area. You'd see it on the dial, like 103.5. You'd find that area where it was located, but then you'd need to gently rotate the dial and move the needle until it came into tune, right? Think about that for a second. Think about the fact that you had to work at it to get the desired outcome. Nothing else is any different. So gratitude is the same. It must be tuned into. Now, as we're moving into my favorite holiday of Thanksgiving, I'm always in observation. What I love about Thanksgiving is it kind of just like smacks everybody over the head with the value of gratitude, and they practice it. But what I'm saying, and this is a lot of the work in the interface response system, is that if we can learn to practice this every day and not have this perception that it's a 1 day a year thing, right? Most people are going to go after Thanksgiving and just go right back to complaining. And complaining, as I said before, is a future thing or a past thing. So it's the same thing with the guitar, by the way. You know, if your guitar is out of tune, it sounds off. If you just pluck those 6 strings, bing, 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 right? And they're out of tune, you won't even know you're playing a guitar. And if you know how to play a song beautifully, but it's out of tune, you won't understand it. So there's a confusion when things are out of tune as well. Are you in tune or out of tune right now? One of the things that I do with my morning routine is I use it to get in tune. And the first thing that I do in the morning, and I'm going to give you an actual schedule of something you can do, some actual action steps, but I get in tune with gratitude. So just like the guitar, the human brain is very similar. We set our goals and commit to a plan on achieving them, right? If you're not a goal setter, you're never going to be a goal getter, but we do that. But due to the way that we've been programmed, we have this tendency to dip into the past. So that's behind the dial. The dial goes back, dip into the past and the future forward, and make attempts at controlling the uncontrollable. So the reason why we feel the way we feel when we go into the past or the future is because they're out of our control. And when we feel out of control, which is a side effect of that, it's not fun. So guess what that does? It gets you and your previous desired state, right? Previous meaning you've lost it because you're out of tune, out of control. So when we practice gratitude, we practice being grateful for the things that we have now. We have them, not yesterday or tomorrow, now. So this places our brains in tune until they get out of tune again. And they will. We must acknowledge that it's the practice of gratitude that matters, because we will constantly get out of tune. And like I said before, it's foolish to think that. Very, very much enjoying reading, and I love to read about psychologists. And the great psychologist Milton Erickson, I don't know if you know his story, but unbelievable story that makes so much sense why he was so powerful. He was famous for his observations of nonverbal communication. Meaning he was in a state, you know, where he was actually paralyzed and he couldn't do anything but move his eyes because of polio back then. And this is before he was a psychologist. So all he was able to do for a long, long time was observe visually. So he had to actually make assumptions of what was going on with people, what their intentions were when they'd say something and not mean it visually. So what's cool about this is he says this: the harshness of life, this is what we struggle with. The harshness of life, now we could become a victim of the harshness of life, but he's just acknowledging that the harshness of life makes most people turn inward. Now think about what happens when you turn inward and you look and you allow your brain and your analytical mind to come in. They have no mental space left over for simple observations and this second language of nonverbal communication, and its value passes them. You know what that means? Is we talk about Viktor Frankl, you know, that space between the stimulus and the response. When we knee-jerk react and we go inward, we're out of that space and we no longer have the ability to change the way we look at things. So I love that work. This is why gratitude, so how do we get back centered if we recognize this, must be practiced. Our programming is set up to take us out of tune as an adapted survival tactic. The reason why we get out of tune is because we're always afraid of getting killed by a dinosaur or that a speeding train is coming. We're taught that from birth, but also we've been taught that through evolution. Read the book Sapiens to really lock into that. So that's why we have to practice, and you're always going to be practicing gratitude. You're never going to arrive at gratitude. You will feel it and sample it and experience it, but you will always have to work at it because of the harshness of the world and how it has this tendency of pushing us out of that space where we can grab that logical, rational. This is the whole concept of my book and the interface response system. So similar to when you play a few songs on a guitar, it actually needs to be tuned. You'll notice if you're watching your favorite rock star, they'll play a song or two, and then somebody will come out and take their guitar. Now, I used to be the chiropractor for Anthrax and some other big bands, and I used to be backstage all the time. And I would watch, when those guys come out and they give them the guitar and then they come back out, what are they doing? They're retuning it. They're retuning it. So we're no different. So the IRS is not, something that this concept of the IRS interface response system, it's a structured system. It's not a destination, right? It's something that we use every day to practice having a more efficient and effective response system to stuff, which is all we can control. So it's just like this concept of the gratitude frequency. The interface response system is, in essence, helping people tune into their gratitude frequency in their present moment, which is where the space lives to make a more logical, rational response. Can you dig it? So that state of being in a structured, it's a structured tool and system to tune yourself back to present moment. So gratitude is a tool in the belt of the interface response system. You'll see when you read my book that we talk a lot about gratitude because it's an essential tool in your belt that assists you. So a big part of the interface response system is to start each day. So let's talk about this, get a little bit more into the actions now. To start each day by tuning yourself up in the morning by capturing the precious moment that we have when we move from unconscious to conscious. Now, I talk about this in my Rise Up Great Day morning, my model morning. It begins, like you could have a whole morning routine, but if you don't recognize the importance of grabbing that split second that you move from unconscious to conscious when your eyes open, you're missing it, because it's in that first minute that you reboot your program for yesterday. And if you buy into that as reality, that you can work as much as you want and feel better from exercise and eating right and all that stuff, but you will still be running yesterday's program. So when you move from sleep to wake, not only does this moment provide you with a great opportunity to tune up, but it's also the time of the day that our brains are actually most out of tune. So there's a distinction. Is that moment when we go from asleep to wake or unconscious to conscious, it's the time where our guitar is most out of tune. And I would assume the reason why is because we went to sleep with yesterday, whether it was good or bad, and then at night, we lose control, we go into the dream state, and yesterday has a tendency of beating up our brains overnight. So then we wake, we go from asleep to awake, unconscious to conscious, and we need to do something so that we don't capture yesterday and let it call the shots for today, because yesterday doesn't apply anymore today. Today is today. So you can understand tuning into the gratitude frequency today is of great value. So we must tune up by simply starting in that instant, and anybody can do this, even if you don't mean it. In that instant when your eyes open up, before you do anything, whether you have an alarm clock or not, I just want you to just have fun and just say, thank you. Just the words thank you. So those two words trigger, here's what happens when you say thank you, right? You might smirk because we talked about this. Those two words actually trigger curiosity and a question in your brain as to what you're thankful for. When I say thank you, I automatically say, for what? So that's the curious trigger that I'm talking about. So what are you thankful for? So I like to simply start with gratitude for the simple things. And I'll go over this in my action plan. Like my heart is beating, my lungs are breathing, my eyes, have the ability to see, just simple stuff like that. After gaining more consciousness, so I just basically practice gratitude, present moment, for what's actually happening. I'm alive. I have another 24 hours, all that stuff. After gaining a little bit more consciousness, which is inevitable, you're waking up and you're moving into the day, then you can move on to a little bit more thought and recognizing things like, your family. You know, the opportunity for greatness today, and a lot of people use affirmations. Those are the best times to use affirmations. I've mentioned many, many times before, right in that first minute or two after I give my chicken a kiss and tell her I love her, because I want to pay it forward, I put my feet on the ground and I always start off by saying, how can I help? I don't get an answer, so that puts me in service that day in curiosity. How can I help? I don't know. I'm going to ask. So after gaining that consciousness, I do that. So once tuned into the gratitude frequency, I find it easier, and all the people that I coach and train find it easier to handle the day. Remember, a more efficient and effective response, more efficient day, and also better use, more efficient use of the interface response system. You actually, the things that you're going to practice today to become unfuckwithable are much more efficient and effective when you're tuned into the gratitude frequency. So the chicken has to come before the egg. So Thanksgiving, folks, you know, I wish I could hold hands with all of you and just circle around and just tell you all how thankful I am, you know, from all of us at Rise Up with Dragon. It's been an interesting ride, and we're just growing and just getting so much feedback, and clothing line and NFTs and all this stuff is happening as a result of you. So I just want everybody to know, in Thanksgiving, I'll be thinking about everybody. So Thanksgiving is a beautiful holiday, and it's meant to focus on this very thing, which is why I like it the most, not the food. As a matter of fact, Chicken and I, for Thanksgiving, at the height of our financial success, we've become minimalist. We're actually going to have Thanksgiving dinner, because we don't have our daughter yet. We're going to have Thanksgiving dinner at our favorite diner. They have this little Thanksgiving meal. So we're super excited about that. We like to keep things simple. We don't want to do dishes and stuff like that. So giving thanks and living in the present is what I love to do most. But it's no wonder our world is so jacked up when you see people doing this only once a year rather than every day. So here's a plan that you can start practicing right away. So step one, and you can write this down or reach out to me through Instagram, and I'll give you this whole rise up. Start small. Step one, start small. Keep it real simple, like I said, like a roof over your head or a hot shower or the food that you have. Start small. The second thing I'm going to challenge everybody to do to practice gratitude and tune into the gratitude frequency is start a gratitude journal. Write about, here's some ideas. Write about something that you're looking forward to. Real easy. Sometimes people have struggled to, because if you're out of practice, it's hard to say, well, what do I have gratitude for? Here's just some ideas. Something that you're looking forward to. Something that you have today that you didn't a year ago. Okay? Now, if you're in a bad marriage and you didn't have it, that's not what I'm talking about. Something that you have today that you love and appreciate that you didn't have a year ago. Sometimes we forget. Perhaps write about a happy memory that you draw. Look outside the window and pick something that you like and just describe it in your gratitude journal. You see, the idea is to just practice writing about things that you're grateful for. And what happens is you get a little confused sometimes, but all of a sudden you're living in the present moment. You're focusing on things that are, not things from yesterday and tomorrow. So describe something you see outside the window. What abilities do you have to help others? Write about that. Do you have the ability to hold an old lady's hand across the road? Do you have the ability to explain something to one of your clients? Do you have the ability to let somebody feel loved? Write about that stuff. It's happening now. What mistake or failure are you grateful for? I love that one. I love to look at something that gets me a little bit off track sometimes, in that out of control yesterday or tomorrow. And reevaluate it and ask what value it's brought to me. So what mistake or failure are you grateful for? So here are some very, very simple tips to close out to practice gratitude. Have fun with it. Have fun with it. It's practice. It's not perfect. Have fun with it and just recognize that it's something that happens over time. So that being said, be creative with it. I gave you some ideas. Be creative and consistent. There's no wrong way to do this, okay? Start looking for things to be grateful in everything. You know, I'm grateful for this mic that I have and the system that I have and the audience and the followers of the Rise Up with Dragon. I mean, I can just see, I've got my DJ equipment, which, by the way, DJ Dragonanda is starting to create some serious beats. Shout out to KMG Music and my coach, Drew Dugan. I'm just looking for things all day, even bad things. I'm looking to find out, like I said before, why I'm grateful for them. Share these things with others and drop some sunshine into others' current reality. When you drop sunshine into somebody's life, it is present moment. It's happening. When I do something for you, I'm speaking live right now. It is happening now. I am grateful for it. I'm grateful for this present moment. And yesterday and tomorrow is not invited to this moment that's happening between you and I today. And then recognize that it's the intention and practice of the gratitude frequency that creates the magic, not the expectations of its outcome and the feelings that you hope you get from it. The gratitude frequency is always needing to be tuned. Acknowledge that. So when you're out of tune, just say it's time for a tuning, right? And you just get conscious and practice these things that I just told you. The key word here in gratitude frequency is actually the second word. The key word is frequency. Your challenge in being grateful once a year in Thanksgiving only is that it's infrequent. So what we really need to do is we need to practice frequency. Hey folks, on behalf of Dragon Chicken, our little girl Ducky that's going to be here real soon, our family to yours, we are just super, super grateful for everything, the good, the bad. Like we always say, it's all good. And I've been practicing, you know, I will come into Thanksgiving, and so will family and so many others that we're coaching. We plan on coming into Thanksgiving with 364 days of gratitude under our belt prior to it. And I hope that this dropped a little bit of sunshine into your lives. Love your feedback. Remember, you can get on our newsletter at riseupwithdragon.com. And just subscribe to it. It's free. It comes out every Monday, and it's awesome. And we have our blog, The Dragon's Lair. Really fun stuff coming out with our NFTs, a clothing line. Karma Mind has an amazing clothing line as well. Help you get into the float state. Follow us on Instagram at Rise Up with Dragon. Love and appreciate you all. Have an amazing day.